Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version. We're continuing with text 36, Chapter 9, Canto 2. I'm here with Stefan and Brielle, and here online there's Kim, Kelly, Kristen, Damayanti, Daru Brahma, George, Vladini Shakti. Hare Krishna. Good to be with everyone. Okay, so we'll go through the Sanskrit words responsibly. Etavat, Eva, Jigyasyam, Tattva, Jigyasuna, Atmana, Anvaya, Yatirekabhyam, Yat, Syat, Sarvatra, Sarvada, Etavadeva Jigyasyam, Tattva Jigyasunatmana, Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam, Yat Sarvatra Sarvada, Etavadeva Jigyasyam, Tattva Jigyasunatmana, Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam, Yat Sarvatra Sarvada, Etavadeva Jigyasyam, Tattva Jigyasunatmana, Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam, Yat Sarvatra Sarvada. Would anyone else like to recite the Sanskrit? Etavadeva Jigyasyam, Tattva Jigyasunatmana, Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam, Yat Sarvatra Sarvada.
Etavadeva Jigyasyam,
Etavadeva Jigyasyam,
Tattva Jigyasunatmana,
Tattva Jigyasunatmana,
Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam,
Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam,
Yat Sarvatra Sarvada.
Etavadeva Jigyasyam,
Etavadeva Jigyasyam,
Tattva Jigyasunatmanaha,
Tattva Jigyasunatmana,
Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam,
Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam,
Yat Sarvatra Sarvada.
Yat Sarvatra Sarvada.
Etavadeva Jigyasyam,
Etavadeva Jigyasyam,
Tattva Jigyasunatmana,
Tattva Jigyasunatmanaha,
Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam,
Anvaya Vyatirekabhyam,
Yasya Sarvatra Sarvada.
Yasya Sarvatra Sarvada.
Hare Krishna. Etavat.
Itavat.
Up to this,
Up to this.
eva,
Eva.
certainly,
Certainly.
jigyasyam,
Jigyasam.
is to be inquired.
Is to be inquired.
Tattva,
Tattva.
the absolute truth.
The absolute truth.
Jigyasuna,
Jigyasura.
by the student.
By the student.
Atmana,
Atmana.
of the self.
Of the self.
Anvaya,
Anvaya.
directly.
Directly.
Vyatirekabhyam,
Yatireka.
indirectly.
Indirectly.
Yat,
Yet.
whatever.
Whatever.
Syat,
Yet.
it may be.
It may be.
Sarvatra,
Sarvatra.
in all space and time.
In all spaces and time.
Sarvada,
Sarvada.
in all
In
circumstances.
all circumstances.
Translation: a person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this, in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. Now, we'll continue in the purport. Yesterday, Prabhu gave class, and we read through the Manmanabhara. So we're going to start with the paragraph in the purport that begins, indirectly it is said. Okay. Indirectly, it is said that the whole Vedic social construction of human society is so made that everyone acts as a part and parcel of the complete body of the Lord. The intelligent class of men, or the Brahmins, are situated on the face of the Lord. The administrative class of men, the Kshatriyas, are situated on the arms of the Lord. The productive class of men, the Vaishyas, are situated on the belt of the Lord, and the laborer class of men, the Sudras, are situated on the legs of the Lord. Therefore, the complete social construction is the body of the Lord, and all the parts of the body, namely the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras, are meant to serve the Lord's whole body conjointly. Otherwise, the parts become unfit to be coordinated with the supreme consciousness of oneness. Universal consciousness is factually achieved by coordinated service of all concerned to the supreme personality of Godhead, and that alone can ensure total perfection. Therefore, even the great scientists, the great philosophers, the great mental speculators, the great politicians, the great industrialists, the great social reformers, etc., cannot give any relief to the restless society of the material world, because they do not know the secret of success as mentioned in this verse of the Bhagavatam, namely that one must know the mystery of Bhakti Yoga. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 15, also it is said, Namam duskritino mudha prapajante naradama mayaya paritagyana asuram bhavam ashrita. Because the so-called great leaders of human society are ignorant of this great knowledge of Bhakti Yoga and are always engaged in ignoble acts of sense gratification, bewildered by the external energy of the Lord. They are stubborn rebels against the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they never agree to surrender unto Him because they are fools, miscreants, and the lowest type of human beings. Such faithless non-believers may be highly educated in the material sense of the term, but factually they are the greatest fools of the world, because by the influence of the external material nature, all their so-called acquisition of knowledge has been made null and void. Therefore, all advancement of knowledge in the present context of things is being misused by cats and dogs fighting with one another for sense gratification. And all acquisition of knowledge in science, philosophy, fine arts, nationalism, economic development, religion, and great activities are being spoiled by being used as dresses for dead men. There is no utility in the dresses used for covering a coffin of a dead body, save getting false applause from the ignorant public. The Srimad Bhagavatam therefore says again and again that without attainment of the status of Bhakti Yoga, all the activities of human society are to be considered absolute failures only. It is said, this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 5.
Parabhavastavada bodha jato yavana jikya sata atma tattvam. Yavat kriyastavadidam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandha. As long as one is blind to inquiring after self-realization, all material activities, however great they may be, are all different kinds of defeat, because the aim of human life is not fulfilled by such unwanted and profitless activities. The function of the human body is to attain freedom from material bondage. But as long as one is fully absorbed in material activities, his mind will be overwhelmed in the whirlpool of matter, and thus he will continue to be encaged in material bodies life after life. And then Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 6. Evam mana karma vasham prayukte avidya yatman yupati yamane pritirna yavan mai vasudeve namuchyate deha yogena tavat. It is one's mind that generates different kinds of bodies for suffering, different kinds of material pangs. Therefore, as long as the mind is absorbed in fruitive activities, the mind is understood to be absorbed in nescience, and thus one is sure to be subjected to material bondage in different bodies again and again until one develops a transcendental love for Godhead, Vasudeva, the Supreme Person. To become absorbed in the transcendental name, quality, form, and activities of the Supreme Person, Vasudeva, means to change the temper of the mind from matter to absolute knowledge, which leads one to the path of absolute realization, and thus frees one from the bondage of material contact and engagements in different material bodies. I'll pause there. Om Gyanatirmirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Upakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cham Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitams Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhadusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine, Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nicham bhagavata sevaya bhagavat yutamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text 36. Ektavad eva jigyasyam tattva jigyasunat mana anvaya vyatirekabhyam yatsyat sarvatra sarvada. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead,
must certainly search for it up to this in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. So this is the fourth of the four seed verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. There are 18,000 verses in the Bhagavatam. All are completely transcendental and liberating. These four are especially poignant and significant. So it talks here about searching after the supreme absolute truth. Yes. So relative truths will not be satisfied. We won't be satisfied with relative truth. It is described earlier in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Kamasya nendriya pritir lavo jiveti yavata. Jivasya tattva jigyasa nartayas chehar karma bi. That life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should aspire for a healthy life, or self-preservation, keeping the body and soul together. Because human life is meant for inquiry into the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. So, just, okay, to make it grounded, all right, so I am David Wolf, 60 years old, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Nice to meet you. Okay. So this is not absolute truth. This is not absolute truth. Was I David Wolf 100 trillion years ago from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania? Will I be David Wolf 100 trillion years from now from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania? No. And even that, well, that's a fantastic span of time, 100 trillion years. Actually, compared to the eternal life of the soul, it's not even a lightning flash. So, okay, so I'm not this body, I'm eternal soul. Oh, that's absolute truth. I'm a servant of the Supreme Person, Jivaras Rupa Krishna Nichidas. This is absolute truth. This is now the relative, this body, can be used to serve the absolute. The temporary can be used to serve the eternal, and that's when it takes on meaning. That's why sometimes it's said or asked, well, how can our material tongue and mouth and lips make transcendental sound vibration? How can our material ears hear transcendental sound vibration? Well, because that's just what they're designed to do. That's described in the part of the purport we read, that this material body is meant to be used in spiritual ways, at least ideally. And in that way, that's what it actually means to spiritualize our existence. And so searching for the absolute, this is distinctively human, right? Other species, it's about temporary gratification through eating, sleeping, mating, defending, temporary gratification based on a false conception of what the self is, that the self is the body. Okay, so relative truths will never be satisfying for the soul. Temporary gratifications, I mean, they might come and go in our journey towards realizing the absolute. And absolute, it's not like it's quite natural. It's quite natural that maybe different approaches, different groups, different persons realize the absolute truth in different perspectives. At the same time, well, it's described in the Bhagavatam. Vedanti tat tatva vidas, tatvam yajgana madvayam, rameti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. Learned transcendentalists realize the absolute truth generally speaking, in three different perspectives. So there's the Brahman, the oneness of all energy. Then there's Paramatma, the Lord in the heart. And this is the second canto. The first chapter of the second canto is about God diffused in energies. The second chapter of the second canto is called the Lord in the heart. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Videsha Arjuna Tishtati. That there's an expansion of God, there's expansion of Krishna sitting right next to us in the area of our heart. We often say that all, like in in coaching or coach training, all the principles, all the skills, all the techniques, they're all intended to support ourselves and others to connect with the highest guidance within. In technical terms, that's the Paramatma within the heart. So we're living from that most essential be, do, have. We're living from the soul of the soul, the heart of our heart. And then all of our doing and acquisition has meaning. And then there's Sri Krishna, there's the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. So, okay, so some conceptions of the absolute, because our conception of the absolute will determine how we're living our life. So there's some conception of the absolute is that at the core, at the substratum of all existence, if we really get to it, at the foundation of all existence is nothing. Is nothing. Many of you have heard me say that, since the late 70s, I've participated in different personal growth transformational programs, and two basic philosophies. One is the nothing approach, that at the core we're nothing. And the idea is that on the foundation of that nothing, we can invent any possibility we choose. So the Vedic conception is there is no nothing, there is no void. Even if we go deep into space, there is ether, which is a subtle, gross element. And then more subtle than ether is material mind, intelligence, and ahankara. More subtle than that is soul, more subtle than that is super soul. More subtle than that is Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So other conceptions of the absolute are that, well, at the core of everything, there's matter, like atoms, quarks, electrons. Okay. And then if one's conception is at the core of everything is matter, then one will be led to try to enjoy Ishvara, Ishvaroham, Mahambogi, Siddhoham, Balavan Sukhi. And then we'll be driven to try to enjoy matter as much as possible as the goal. And the result of that, Yehi Sam Sparsha Jamboga, Duki Yonaya Egate, Adyantavanta Konte Nateshu Amate Buddha. The result of that will be frustration. Moga Shamoga Karmanam, Moga Gana Vichitasa, will be frustration. That because like a fish out of water, doesn't matter what material amenities a fish has out of water, what will the fish do in its nice house, nice position in society? It will flop and die. So the fish's home is water. Our home is eternity. And temporary gratifications, material gratifications, they just won't be satisfying. So it's pretty common that after a few months or a few years, maybe a few lifetimes, decades, whatever, then there's some realization. That this is futile. I'm frustrated. This isn't working. Sure, I can try another relationship, but it's the same stuff. Puna punash charvita charvananam. I can get a different job. I can get more people to give me accolades, but it's dry, it's empty. So then that leads to, let's call it jnana type processes. Like it leads to some realization, which is true and healthy, that there's no genuine fulfillment within the material sphere. So let me renounce this. Then some conception of absolute truth is, actually absolute truth is not nothing, it's not matter, it's spirit, the undifferentiated oneness. Okay, so we're coming closer to the absolute. That though is still not the very substratum of existence. The very substratum of existence, that's because the Vedas make it very clear. Bhagavad Gita, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Krishna says, I, Sri Krishna, Bhagavan, Vasudeva, son of Vasudeva, I am the source of the Brahma Gyoti. I am the source of the Brahma Gyoti. The first line of the first verse of Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oh my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Janmadhyasya yata Yata Yaton Vayad, that I offer my respectful obeisances unto Vasudeva, Lord Sri Krishna, because he is the absolute truth. So the Bhagavatam presentation is the substratum of all existence, is transcendent personhood. Vasudeva means a person that's all pervading. Well, all pervading means there can be no personhood. No, this is beyond material conception. And as we purify our hearts, we get more and more of a realization. What's that mean? Transcendental, pervasive personhood. Because in this realm, our experiences, person means, well, I'm here and I'm not there. So Sri Krishna, Vasudeva, a person who exists everywhere. And okay, so then the term here must certainly search for the absolute truth, the supreme. I'll read the whole verse. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this, in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. So the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. So absolute means personhood, not that, well, because yeah, material personality, that's temporary and ephemeral. And so, I mean, you might say an incomplete conception or even a mistaken conception is, so when we get to spiritual, then there's no personality. No, Bhagavatam begins, Janma Dhyasya Yataha. What exists in the effect must exist in the source. We're persons, we have form and activities and qualities. So therefore, form, activities, qualities must exist in the absolute. Just like material existence, that's not absolute, that's the shadow. So with the shadow, we don't get to know much about the actual substance, but we get to know the substance must exist. We can know something about the substance. And to actually turn towards the substance, we need to turn away from the shadow and towards the light. And then we get to know what spiritual personality, spiritual personhood, this is the foundation of everything. Okay, in all circumstances, all space, that's what absolute means. It's true in all space, time, and circumstances. And in human life, we'll only be satisfied when we're going for the absolute, that which is true in all space, time, and circumstance. Otherwise, it will be always chasing a carrot on the stick frustration, and both directly and indirectly. Both directly and indirectly. So directly is like we're directly, well, I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, this has many layers of meaning here, but certain one meaning that I get it. Directly is like we're directly studying Srimad Bhagavatam. We're directly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're directly singing Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. And then indirectly is like, okay, and to help us get towards realization of the absolute, here's what I don't do. Okay, so we stay away. There's a verse from, here's what I stay away from to help me go towards the goal. Go towards, of course, in bhakti, the journey is the goal. So we're achieving the goal right this instant. This is the goal. And by engaging ourselves in the journey, then we go more and more towards the goal, towards eternal love of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Rupa Goswami writes, Atyahara prayashascha prajapo niyamagraha jana sangas chalalyam cha sadbir bhakti prasidati. So he describes that these are some indirect ways to achieve self-realization and realization of the absolute. It's just things to stay away from. Atyahara means to collect too much. To collect too much, right? Like how many junk drawers do I really need? Okay. How many broken CD players do I really need? Okay. So to collect too much, because it's not just an external thing. I got stuff, I got books, clothes. That's like really not efficient for my process of self-realization, it clutters my mind. So Prabhupada emphasized simple living, high thinking. Simple living, high thinking. Atyahara also means collecting too much in the belly. Okay. We can relate to that one. That's another form. Prayashas cha prajalpa means gossip, useless talks. Shokta vyadani rajendra nuinam shanti sahasra sa pashitamat matatvam griheshu griyamedinam. And this is spoken by Shukadeva Goswami right at the beginning of the second canto. It says that, those going for the material sense gratification, they've got thousands and thousands of topics to talk about. And that was before the internet age. And what's the quality of those topics? Apashyatam matarvam. Those topics are devoid of atmatarva. They're devoid of going for the absolute truth. Griyashu griyamidanam. And they just keep us round and round in the cycle of birth, death, old age, disease. So to avoid prajalpa, useless talk, talk that takes us away from focus on the absolute, takes us away from distinguishing reality from illusion, starting with ourselves. Right? In our Sattva programs, so we say, well, one of the main survival strategies that keeps us in lower consciousness is avoiding pain. Right? Sometimes we have a slogan: "Pain is good," in the sense that there's like a message there. There's a message there, right? Be aware that pain is because I've been wearing these masks. I've been living a superfluous life rather than a life dedicated to the substratum of all existence. So it's not like I love talking philosophy, and then this is applied philosophy, because as spirit souls having a human experience, as Teilhard Chardin likes to say, if we're not going for the very foundation of existence, then we're living superfluously, and then it's mask life, and then internal height, we're living in quiet desperation, hanging on in quiet desperation, and it's a fake life, and then we die, and we take another birth and do more superfluousness. So this going for the substratum of existence, that connection, it's not just a philosophical abstract thing. It's like, this is the key to a happy life. This is the key to a fulfilling life. And this Bhagavatam, this is the science. This is the science of self-realization. I was just conducting a coaching session yesterday to someone who's pretty new to this, very open-minded, but pretty new. And I use that term, science of self-realization. He was like he's not into religion or even spirituality, but I just use that term, science of self-realization. He was like, well, I really like that term. And so internally I said, thank you, Srila Prabhupada. But maybe in his mind, David Wolf is like, wow, that's a really good term. Okay. Eventually I'll reveal to him. It comes from someone named Bhaktivedanta Swami. Yeah, and that's it, because sure, I mean, if we get to the Bhagavatam begins, Sheto Dharma Projita Kortavitra Parmoni Matsarinam Satam Vejam Vastuam Achabastu Shivanam Tapucharam Mulanam. It starts with rejecting all cheating religion, koitava, cheating, rejecting all cheating in the name of religion, all materialism in the name of pseudo-religion. So the essence of religious process is supposed to take us to genuine experience of self-realization. Prajakshava Dhammam Garmya, Prajakshava Dhammam Garmya, Shushukam Kartumabhyam. And so it's not supposed to be some hollow thing for social status or a mask of piety or something. So, so Prajalpa, to like, if we want to advance on this path, this is like guidelines of how the path towards the absolute, towards actual fulfillment, not just not just the shadow, but the actual substance. So these are guidelines. Avoid useless talk, prajalpa, niyamagraha. Niyamagraha is one word that has two meanings, and both of the meanings indicate ways of being that are not helpful to progress towards realization of the absolute. One meaning of niyamagraha is to whimsically neglect rules and regulations that will help us progress towards purification of heart and towards realization of the absolute and towards developing our original loving relationship, our unique loving relationship with the personality of God. So to whimsically neglect rules and regulations that will be helpful, that's going to impede our progress. And the other meaning of niyamagraha is to blindly follow rules and regulations and to miss the forest due to the trees, to blindly follow rules and regulations without knowing why and without being connected to the essence of the purpose of the rules and regulations. So Rupa Goswami gives many lists, and he lists qualities that are conducive if we want to progress towards realization of the absolute directly and indirectly. Utsahan nishtahadaya tat karma pravartana sango tyaga tatovri de sadbi bhakti kata prasidati. So utsahan means enthusiasm, and Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada, they define enthusiasm as endeavor executed with intelligence. So enthusiasm is not intrinsically like cheerleading or high energy like that. Could look that way, but it's very grounded definition. Endeavor, purposeful endeavor, executed with intelligence, clear, grounded intelligence. And that's the thing, because we probably noticed the material context, including the context of our own mind, our bodies, the political situation, the economic situation, pandemics, material context is inherently disturbing. So are we going to allow our steady enthusiasm to become unsteady and wavering when things aren't going my way? Or they're going my way so nice that I get so elated that in that celebration I crash. Yam hinate tiantete, pusham pusharshaba. Samaduka Sukham Dhira Somitat Vaya Kalpate. Krishna says that one who's one who is steady in happiness and distress and not disturbed by either this is the platform of liberation. So enthusiasm, patience, confidence in the process. Okay. So absolute truth. And then in the part of the purport we read, Prabhupada talks about, well, there's a verse in Bhagavatam, Atabhum virjuja shreshta sparna shrama vibhagasha sunusvi tasya dharmasya samsitya haritoshinam. That what it says is by fulfilling our responsibilities according to our place in society, our job, our occupation, our family relationships, by filling the highest perfection we can achieve by fulfilling our responsibilities is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so if we're not doing that, then Prabhupada uses this term, then it's all being spoiled by being used as dresses for dead men. Dresses for dead men. Whatever analogy we want to use, that sometimes we use the analogy like rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. Okay. We can imagine, let's say, making the table nice. I think the fork goes on the left side and the doily goes over here. No, it's important. Okay. So, yes, so again, not to neglect those things, but the idea is that, here's the thing, all the relationships within this realm, they're going to be destroyed today, tomorrow, next week, or at the time of the death of the body. It's all gone. It's all gone. So the idea is not to, let's be responsible and all that, and let's put at the center of the relationship cultivating cultivating progress towards realization of the absolute. Otherwise, just like dresses for a dead man, rearranging the chairs on the ship of the Titanic, whatever analogy we want to use. It's castles in the sand. The tide comes, washes it away. In most cases, before the time of death. But time of death, another 10, 30 years, whatever it is, 60 years for some of us. Okay. Yes. So that's the urge. Jivasya Jigyasa. Human life is meant for inquiry and progress towards the realization, personal realization of the absolute, of absolute truths. Who am I? And what am I is not the body, a spirit, soul, as a servant of the Supreme. So that's, then relationships become truly meaningful and satisfying. Otherwise, it's just tune in tomorrow for the next episode of the soap opera. And and so Prabhupada talks a lot here about material education. There's a bhajan by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and he goes, I've given so much life energy to advance in material education, and the result is I've become more of an ass. He can be kind of very blunt, Bhakti Vinod. The result is I've become more of an ass. His words, not mine. What can I say? Okay. All right. So, because it's just more and more. It's not actual wisdom. It's more and more data and information about how to futilely attempt to enjoy material nature, which is the shadow. It's not the substance. It's not the substrate. Now, so education is not discouraged. Narada Muni says in Bhagavatam, idam vipumsas tapasa shutasya va suktasya sviktasya cha buddhidattayo avitrutota kavibir nirupito yadutamashlaka gunanu varnana. Narada Muni, just like Prabhupada here, says, yeah. So he goes like the ultimate perfection of political education, economics, chemistry, social work, psychology, physics. He names all the fields of human endeavor is, yes, use this knowledge, use this educational process to support the supreme process of self-realization, the supreme science of the truth. Then that's the perfection goal and ultimate completion of all those fields of human endeavor. Queen Kunti, I know there's a Vaishnavi women's group starting teachings of Queen Kunti, a wonderful book. It's basically transcribed lectures from Srila Prabhupada. I heard about it yesterday from Malini. That's the book that the group is beginning to read. So Queen Kunti says, Janmeshvaya Shruta Shribir, Edamanamada Puman, Naivarhatya Vidatumbai, Tvama Kinchana Gochara. She says that one who's gifted, blessed by their karma and God with like nice aristocratic birth, attractive, beautiful physical appearance, education, high education, degrees, opulence, material opulence, affluence. As she goes, it can be a curse. Doesn't have to, can be a curse. Because it can be very difficult for such a spirit soul having a human experience to call out with feeling, Krishna, Krishna, my dear Govinda, please, Srila Prabhupada, engage me in your service with heart. Because things are pretty good. Why should I get all desperate about devotional service? Things are going good. Now, this isn't a simplistic analysis, right? So someone could have hundreds of billions of dollars in the bank and have all the material opulences of attractiveness and good birth and all that. And they could realize that material enjoyment is futile and they've tried everything, and then they go just to a simple, humble, devotional mood. And someone could be penniless or poverty-stricken, and in their heart is not godly thoughts. In their heart is envy and wicked jealousy that he doesn't deserve to have that nice house. I do. Okay. But Queen Kunti is just giving a caution that if nice things come our way, let's be sure to use them in Krishna service. Queen Kunti, devotee of Krishna. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that Suchinam Shrimatanke Yoga Brashta Britate. Krishna says that if one progresses in devotional path, doesn't quite make it out of the material cycle. Of course, in a very elevated state of devotion, one doesn't even care to get liberated from birth, death, old age, disease. And then in such a state of mind, one is automatically liberated. That's another discussion. But Krishna says, so then one might take birth in a rich family. And then, because the idea is if one is nicely situated materially, then one doesn't need to work hard just to pay the electric bill. One doesn't need to work hard just to put food on the table. And then there's ample time for chanting 64 rounds per day, ample time for studying Bhagavatam verses, ample time to let's do kirtan programs. Of course, I think it's safe to say that in this current age, most who are very opulent, they're not necessarily using that time in God's service, but at least ideally, that's why Krishna says, that one who on the path of devotion doesn't quite come to 100%, takes birth in an opulent family. Hare Krishna. I'll read the verse again. Etavadeva jigyasyam tattva jigyasuna mana anvaya vyatirikabhyam yaksya sarvatra sarvada. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. Hare Krishna. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your presence and association. I welcome any comments or questions.
I have a question.
Bria.
So I've heard that there's different degrees of intelligence. One being like we hear and we learn from hearing.
Yeah.
And then the last one is like we learn from doing.
Okay.
That's accurate. I've heard that. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I know what you're referring to.
Okay. So that's interesting because it seems like what Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada are encouraging is direct realization through experience. And so I guess I'm wondering what's the balance between the two of those, like which is really more intelligent, like surrendering to a pure soul and just trusting what they say, or like learning from direct experience through direct realization.
Okay.
Because like we can surrender to a pure soul, but then that could include blind following. But then there can also be a lot of intelligence in just surrendering and trusting what this person is saying.
Yeah.
Like they've gone through the whole process of the direct experiencing.
Right.
And so has the lineage, like
Yes.
thousands of years of direct experiencing. And so it's like here, it's on a silver platter, like all of my direct experience realization. There it is.
You don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it seems like to just do that could be blind following, and then there's no substance or like soul or depth. There's no realization. Like there's no direct realization of these truths. So I guess I'm interested in that, particularly because I know that's what Stefan is studying with his in my experience, finding God through direct perception, direct experience.
Yeah.
And then just a few weeks ago, I had my own experience of how it felt like my own realization in God gained soul and depth through direct perception of God and personal in nature.
Yeah.
So I'm like just much more inspired right now by direct experience.
Yeah.
And kind of not jaded, but I don't like when I feel like there's a lot of people, not just in the Hare Krishna movement, but in so many religions that are just doing the blind following thing without any
Yeah.
direct experience, and there's no like substance there.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm just curious, but then yet there's that phrase that the more intelligent kind of learning is we learn by hearing and not by doing.
Right.
So yeah, I'm just curious how to balance those things.
Okay, thank you, Bhakti Priya. I appreciate your thoughtful, intelligent questions. Okay, thank you. All right, so there's kind of like this kind of like 4-part hierarchy about learning.
Mhm.
And usually that's described in relation to realizing like what not to do.
Okay.
Whereas the direct experience, that's more presented as like direct experience of like the joy of the soul and connection with God. It's more like a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
So just like as a basic example. So the example given, Prabhupada gives, okay, so let's say something like stealing. Okay, so first class intelligence, I hear, don't steal, not good to steal. Like it just, no, you'll get in trouble. Okay, got it. And then, so second class intelligence is like, I hear, don't steal. I'm like, well, I don't know. You know, stealing might work because then won't have to work so hard. And I think I could, yeah. But then I see someone else steals and I see he's in prison and he's not happy. Got it. Not going to steal. Second class. Third class intelligence is I hear and don't steal. I don't get it. I see someone else get in prison because he gets in trouble. He's embarrassed. He's shamed. But I'm smarter than him. I'll get away with it. I'm going to steal. Okay. So then I steal and I get caught and I go to prison or I get shamed. Got it. Not going to do that anymore. Fourth class intelligence. I hear, I don't get it. I see someone else suffer. I don't get it. I try it. I don't get it. And fourth class intelligence is like, I'm in prison. I still don't get it. Okay, I know why I got caught. But when I get out, I have a better plan for stealing. So that's fourth class, just don't get it. So I know myself, I can look at different aspects of life and spiritual life and things where I'm definitely fourth class intelligence, still not getting it. Okay, so that's more for the negative, like what not to do. That's the indirect. Okay, then the direct experience. Yeah, that's the point. That's why Bhagavad, you know that verse, directed. So Krishna says this is the actual perfection of actual religion. It gives direct experience and not just, I believe, I'm a Buddhist, I believe. And the next week, well, now I believe in Christianity. Now, who cares what you believe? Who cares what I believe? What's your experience? What's the experience of transformation of heart? What's your experience of transforming of greedy, toxic qualities to compassionate, loving, inspiring, godly qualities? What's your experience? Who cares what you believe? Okay. Yeah. So, right. So that's the thing, that actual spiritual process results in direct experience, otherwise it's empty, it's dry. It's just like, it becomes like a social game. Well, that's where I give my tithe, or I go to the Sunday feast and this is where I have my social life. And what's your experience of spiritual life? What's your experience of realizing who you are as a soul? What's your realization about God? What's your experience? Let's bring this alive. So that's actual spirituality. And okay, all right. And then we can accelerate on the path of getting that direct experience through hearing, through using our intelligence to know who to hear from. Let's hear, because I like the way you asked your question. So Bhagavatam, this is a book, but it's not a book in a conventional sense. every sentence, every syllable, it's the realization of persons who have direct experience of themselves as soul and of God. It's the realization of Shukadev Goswami, Brahma. It's a realization of Prabhupada. It's a realization of Narada Muni. So we're getting direct experience, and that's why whatever we cognitively understand or not, the Bhagavatam, it's a Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita. These are self-revealing vibrations, and so each word conveys truth and is non-different from the truth that it reveals. That's why it's potent, because it is about direct experience, and it gives us direct experience to the extent that we're open. So we hear, and then we hear from the proper authority, and that requires intelligence. And then we get the direct experience, and that direct experience gives us deeper inspiration to continue to hear. Just to take, let's call it an ordinary example. That's a word from the ordinary analogy. So, okay. So let's say someone wants to really progress in realizing mathematics or physics. Okay, mathematics or physics. So necessarily, if I really want to learn math or physics, then I'm going to use my intelligence, not blind. I'm going to use my intelligence to find a realized teacher, someone who has realized the truths of math and physics. Okay, and maybe that will be a legitimate university department with professors who have the credentials, and they'll give them books written by themselves or others who have direct experience, and we hear from them. It's never a process of blind following. Let's say we hear, okay, well, in the book it says this, then you on the chalkboard you just wrote that, and so I'm not seeing how they connect. So we're meant to ask questions. Tadvidi pranipatina pariprashana sevaya. It's a question not with cynicism, with trust that you can reveal knowledge to me. So I'm hearing from the book, from the professor. I have intelligence. I know who to hear from. I hear from them. They give me a process. Do these homework exercises. Read this. And then each week, I'm deepening my direct realization of physics. Now I can say, I don't want to hear from anyone. Just on my own. Don't tell me about Newton or Einstein. I'm just on my own. I might discover something about the truths of math or physics. I mean, and literally, maybe if I just wander on my own for 60 or 70 years, maybe I'll get 10% of what I would have gotten in 1 year by using my intelligence to hear from the proper authority.
Seems like it's a combination of both. Like hearing from the authority and then not giving us the lens through which to have our direct experience.
Yeah.
And then our direct experience can either confirm or disconfirm that, but to just do it without hearing from spiritual authority can take, like you say, a really long time.
Yeah, and Krishna addresses this in Bhagavad Gita in terms of self-realization and realization of the different aspects of the absolute. Krishna says, Bahunam janmanam ante gyanavan mam prapadite vasudeva sarvamiti samahat masudulva. He says that one who is sincere and just does it without hearing from authority, but is trying to use their brain and heart to figure it out. He says, if they're sincere, after many births, they'll come to devotional service to me. Or we can hear from a master in devotional service and just take to the goal now. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Any other comments or questions? George.
Hare Krishna, David. Can you hear me?
Hare Krishna.
I'm really reflecting on this verse, specifically in regards to using material knowledge as a way to get spiritual knowledge or connect with God in everything, in like all circumstances, as it said. Specifically, out of necessity in my current life experience, I'm relating to how we can use our profession to get closer to God, like how the process of our work gets closer to God. Especially in kind of embarking on a new career. I am. Hold on. Sorry, David.
I'm hearing you, George, though your voice is like a bit muffled. I'm hearing most of the words you're saying.
Hear me better now?
Yes, it is.
So, like specifically the transition that I've had in my career has been one where, you know, the material knowledge that I learned, let's say in college, in my specialty training, I went from seeing, let's say, I gained knowledge from treating maybe 70 or 80 patients in 3 years or so, especially.
Yeah.
And I am now in a career where I am seeing 100 to 120 patients in one day, rather than 3 years. So I found myself very much praying in the last 3 or 4 weeks a lot to Krishna, and that thing keeps coming in my mind, like Prabhupada said, please make me dance.
Yeah.
Because I understand that even though I've had the training, you know, it's a totally different ballgame now.
Yeah.
And because, and I recognize that when my prayers, and initially when I started, were very much in the mood of desperation and insecurity, even fearfulness, or even like a victim, kind of like in the mood of tamas, perhaps, where I'm saying, please, Krishna, like help me, like, give me light and shine light in my eye, in my heart, and in my mind with the, torchlight of knowledge, even though I'm doing this kind of tooth cobbling service like an orthodontist, still it was very much in that mood of tamas maybe, and out of sincerely searching and going through this process and seeing how he's helping me both through mistakes and through successes. It's changed kind of the quality of my relationship, and it's kind of strengthened. I'm praying even more now. I'm praying even more now to Krishna, and I'm in this kind of middle ground where I'm increasingly I'm doing it. Please, Krishna, like I'm feeling more surrender, and I'm more like, please just let me do this for your enjoyment, and I'm discovering a greater connection with God through doing this service than I ever had anticipated. I'm praying significantly more, and I'm starting to get just a small amount of realization what it's meant to use our profession, especially something that's very kind of a cornerstone in everyone. Like when you say, "Hey, how are you doing? What do you do?" It's like the cornerstone almost of many people's lives, and I'm starting to see out of this experience that I'm having how I'm getting closer to God through it. Yeah, and it's helping me pray so much more. And I notice even that when I'm at work or going towards work, I'm thinking about Krishna way more than when I'm at home, and the stakes aren't so high, and the pressure isn't as intense. I'm not, and it's similar to like kind of what Queen Kunti was saying also. So I'm very much appreciating this verse as and I mean my small found realization about what it means to use our profession and our even material knowledge of something very mundane to get to Krishna.
Thank you, Bhakti George. I'm moved by your sharing. Yeah, Prabhupada talks about that in this verse. The purpose of varna means occupation, career. I quoted the verse from the second chapter of first canto of Bhagavatam. Uh, Samsadir Haritoshanam. So I hear that, like in your dentistry or orthodontic career, that you feel yourself because you're relating to it with deeper prayer, whether in the mistakes, the successes, that I hear in the quality of your voice, you're coming to a deeper, more peaceful, realized relationship with Krishna in your heart. The quality of your prayer is coming to higher modes, and so through your profession, you're moving towards the absolute. And it's very wonderful to hear. Very wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's also about, like, I'm experiencing more surrender, like tangible surrender, because so much of the education process is about, being the controller or being right and wrong. We take tests and things like that, and this is the right answer. And then when just experiencing the reality of, like I can't on my own accord in any sort of way, you know, just I see how on my own I can't do any of the things that I'm doing, and I'm seeing him giving me the answers, and that's making me surrender that and understand that, it's not just my work, it's he's my maintainer, and also in all kind, my maintainer, my provider, my protector. So it's letting me be more at peace about not being the controller, not being like I'm responsible for the success, or I'm responsible for any of that. I see just by the sheer kind of magnitude of my current life experience, how he's just moving everything, and I'm having a little bit more heightened sense of that, which is very relieving, honestly.
Relieving. I hear the relief in your voice. I find these to be beautiful realizations. It's quintessential Bhagavad Gita, right? That's like the essence to do your duty, uh, fulfill your responsibility, and surrender the results to Krishna. And I hear your sense of liberation as you're realizing that.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Bhakta George.
Hare Krishna.
Ladini Shakti, Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the class. I had a lot of fun listening. But I actually would like to ask something from yesterday. Two things. So one, yesterday you were speaking about what was it? Yeah, that like it's not gambling. It's not gambling to practice this bhakti yoga. But I think Shah Prabhupada even mentioned sometimes that it is gambling. Like it's gambling for the spirit soul who has like no realization yet.
Yep.
So to like give ourselves to the process with some commitment is gambling. So yeah. And then my question is, yesterday we had the reading of Krishna book, and there is Sandipani Muni, teacher of Krishna and Balaram, and then at the end they ask him what he wants from them for teaching them. And he wants his dead son back. So that's really strange to me, because I would think that the teacher of Krishna will be a pure devotee. So why would we want such a thing as a son? Why doesn't he want like pure devotional service, or things like mostly we hear the devotees pray for?
Thank you, Ladini Shakti. Yeah, when we say anything in the material realm, it's gambling. Like, okay, I'm giving my time to this frivolous activity, and so like right. So like, how much is a moment worth? We can't, let's say if we go, okay, well now it's 9:13 a.m. Eastern time here on Saturday, June 19th. Okay, well, even if I waste a few minutes, but let's say if I had billions of dollars, I could buy back that moment. No, I can't. So even one moment's worth more than trillions and trillions of dollars. So it's gambling if we're wasting our time outside of true progress towards the absolute. And then I said, yes, so Krishna consciousness isn't gambling. So yeah, that's kind of, I'm speaking from the absolute platform, and I'm not on the absolute platform. But you're right, Srila Prabhupada said, yeah, from someone who's, when we're, to the extent that we're not realized, and I'm in that category of not realized. And that's why I'm not giving myself fully to Krishna consciousness. Well, I'm not so sure. Then the next step is surrender. Not so sure. And it's like foolishness at that point, but that's where I'm at. So sometimes Prabhupada says, take a gamble. Try it. Chant Hare Krishna. Take a gamble. You know, because you're gonna use your time somewhere. So of course, when Prabhupada knows it's no gamble. It's a sure thing. It's your eternal benefit. This is your real happiness. But Prabhupada also knows when he says that the spirit, soul, and the conditioned body, for them, from that point of view, but if I spend time doing that, then I'm not seeing that movie. I'm not hanging out with friends. It's a gamble. So Prabhupada's encouraging, yeah, take a gamble. Yeah, as you said, Libby, you had to respond to it from the consciousness of the conditioned soul. Krishna consciousness also seems like a gamble. And so the pure devotees are encouraging us. That's the intelligent gamble. Go for it. Go for it. And then with Sandipani Muni, I mean, what comes to me, you know, I don't know details about Sandipani Muni's psychology, but what comes to me is like, you know, these are human beings. They're human beings. Yeah, Sandipani. The idea is Sandipani Muni asked Krishna to return his lost sons who had died early. I'd like to say, let's say if we take like Rukmini. Rukmini is the first wife of Krishna. I mean, well, what could be? Oh my God, she's the first wife of Krishna. And her first son, out of 10 sons, it's just like put herself in the humanity of it. Like it's not like a cartoon. Her first son was kidnapped. Her first son was kidnapped as a baby. Okay. So we said, oh, she's a pure devotee. She says she didn't feel any grief. She has Krishna right there. No, we can't imagine like a mother had her baby kidnapped. This is very, very human, very, very, very human emotion. And it's human emotion, not disconnected from Krishna, but it's so for Sandipani Muni to won his sons back and to request Krishna for that, you know, I don't know the details of the psychology, but for me it doesn't represent something that's not pure devotion. Like I don't think, oh, if he was a pure devotee, he'd ask for that. It's kind of like it's like I'm putting pure devotee in this narrow box. So it's like it's very rich in relationships, and there's tears and there's pain of a father losing a son, a mother having a baby kidnapped. So there's very, very just like there's so much rich emotion in this material world. So in the spiritual relationships, it's even richer emotion. And I don't know the meaning of it, but I know that this is just the shadow. The soap operas here are just the shadow. So Sandipani Muni, Rukmini, Devaki, this is the real emotion. And it's not for me to say if they were pure devotees, why wouldn't they do that? That's kind of like me trying to put pure devotion in the sides of a postage stamp, where it's like infinite galaxies wide.
So how would Krishna allow his first son to be kidnapped?
Why not? That's it. Because if Krishna were good, or if he were all powerful, he wouldn't do that. But that's just putting me in the position of God. If I were God, I'd do it. So Krishna is co-creating always to increase the love of his devotees for him. Always to increase the love of his devotees for him. If we look at that particular pastime, it's quite an amazing pastime. In other words, like, you know, as there's a book from the 80s by Rabbi Harold Krishna. Nice name, eh? Harold Krishna. why do bad things happen to good people, right? So then the idea is, so like, like I'm putting myself in the position of God, or how Krishna is God. That's obviously a bad thing. Whereas Lord Chaitanya says, Vaite Bhadra Bhadragan Sabha Manodar. Lord Chaitanya says this conception of bad and good in the material realm, it's like wet stool and dry stool. It's like it's all nonsense conception. And so absolute good is that which brings us towards love of the absolute supreme personality of Godhead. And then, so what's absolute good might sometimes conform with my material conception of good or bad. So Krishna is doing everything to bring us to him, and that's absolutely good. And the forms that it looks like might sometimes conform with like, well, if I were God, that's how I would do it. That's not how I would do it. That's just my false ego.
Yes, thank you. That's helpful. It feels really like freeing to like broaden the perspective.
Thank you, Ladini.
I want to add something to that conversation because I often have thought of that question reading about when Mother Devaki meet Krishna at the bottom at Kurukshetra.
Yeah.
Solar eclipse, and she meets him, and same thing. What she asks is she wants her sons back.
Yeah.
Something that Sandipani Muni. And I remember in meditating on that, I saw my own propensity of impersonal, Shunyavadi, Shunyavadi, yeah. That to put like there is only the devotee and Krishna, and there is nothing else. Like I was thinking, well, Devaki, she has Krishna in front of her. What does she need? She doesn't need anything else. She has Krishna, and the pure devotee only wants Krishna. And then meditating more, I realized that this was my conception and personal conception, because really Krishna means Krishna and his entourage, Krishna and his devotees. And Krishna and his devotees and the relationship between the devotees. Yeah. And that Devaki, within the pastime, she's an eternal associate of the Lord. Within the pastime, then she had those sons. And yeah, she wants to have a relationship because everybody has a space. And within Krishna consciousness, it's not simply the devotee and Krishna. In fact, it's very rarely the devotee and Krishna. It's not the devotee of Krishna and Krishna. It's mainly the devotee and the other devotee, serving each other, enjoying each other, and with Krishna at the center.
Thank you for those points, Malini. Yeah. And just hearing you share, like, I feel certain that in Devaki asking for her son back, Sandipani Muni asking for his children back, Krishna is so pleased. Krishna is so pleased by that, and like that. Thanks for that, and thank you, Melanie. Parampara, you had your hand up. Perhaps you're not available now. Hare Krishna.
I have another question.
Yeah, Ria.
In the verse, it says both directly and indirectly.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, you touched on it a little bit, but I still don't fully understand the examples of directly and indirectly.
Okay, I think there could be many dimensions to that phrase, but one way that Prabhupada describes it is directly is what we do, indirectly is what we don't do. Okay, right. So we don't engage in gossip and frivolous association and intoxication and meat eating, and so it's the things that we give up that help us. And then directly is what we directly do, like discussing Bhagavatam. That's one we can look more into what Prabhupada says about that phrase, but that's one thing that sticks in my mind. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your class. Hare Bol.